Good morning, everybody. How you doing out there in internet land? My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. Welcome back to another session of Front Porch Brunch, that Saturday morning live stream dedicated to you, the average American, hard working out there during the week, trying to catch up on life, trying to decompress from the stresses that have been your life. And now you finally get to do it. And that also means you got to catch up on what's been going on in the world. Hence, that's why we're here. We are here to help provide you with some news and figure out what is going on in the world. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. Thank you ever so much for stopping by Front Porch Brunch. And we're going to give it a few minutes to let everybody sort of filter in. Also, I need to check the settings.
So much for stopping by our Front Porch.
Okay, all right. I know they're working. And now let's see what goes on over here on Rumble. Let's make sure you're working. And apparently you are. Yes. Okay. All right. We're up on all sides. This is good. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. Welcome to Front Porch Brunch, a live stream dedicated to helping you catch up on the news. And by you, I mean everybody out there. You might not even be in America. You might be somewhere around the world. As a matter of fact, there's a young lady I am very sure is on the other side of the globe, Millicent, who's a friend of Mike Harlow's and also one of his chief tormentors. If you listen to, and there she is right now. Good morning, you lovely young thing. How you doing, Millicent? I was just telling everybody that you are Mike Harlow's chief tormentor, clipper of expressions, comments, untoward remarks, and then you tend to post them on the internet and cause him great angst and embarrassment. No, I'm just kidding. No, anything we do toward Mike Harlow, we do out of love. So no, don't be sorry you're late. No, you know how this live stream goes. We're usually good for about Yes, it is absolutely true. You are Mike Harlow's, like, one of his worst forms of torment, but in a good way. So no, I'm glad you're here. There's going to be some other people stopping by. I have no doubt about that. It is the 4th of July weekend. I cannot believe how fast this year has gone by. It's just remarkable to me. Yeah, Millicent, you're right. Mike probably does hate you, but you love him, so he just got to get over it. That's all there is to it. So yeah, it's the 4th of July weekend here in America, and for those of you around the world, and I know that every nation, celebrates their independence and, should appropriately feel patriotic. In America, this is when we do it. And we do it. And like, all Americans down through the years, we are loud and proud. We're going to do it with a lot of fireworks. We're going to do it with, a significant amount of alcoholic consumption, probably eating some food we shouldn't, and otherwise just hanging out together and enjoying the fact that, we're Americans. And when we get to the end of the show, I want to read something that I always find poignant at this time of the year, but that's for later on in the live stream. So yeah, for everybody who's out there right now, again, if you're just stopping in and just getting here for the beginning, my name is Brian Trippett. This is Front Porch Brunch, a live stream that's dedicated to allowing you the opportunity to catch up on the news from the previous week that you may not have had a chance to hear about because you've been out there working, you've been trying to help your families. You've been trying to make the boss happy. Good morning, Robert Lowry. Glad to have you in the house, sir. We are live streaming on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We are on Twitter. I'm trying to figure out how to get this thing and get good morning. Yeah, there she is. Oh, you're on the Potomac. Oh, listen to this. Listening live on our boat in the Potomac. Hey, this live stream is going places. We are international. And we are aquatic. So yeah, we're going places with this live stream. Leah, good morning, my dear. As always, glad to see you, darling. Glad to have you here. So yeah, it's 4th of July weekend, and Millicent is absolutely right. It is crazy that this year has gone by as quickly as it has, and so much has happened so far in this year. And even if you break it down, so much has happened in this previous week. So, it's just been absolutely nutty. So before we're going to get into all that news, I do want to, again, bring up something, and I'm going to run a cryon across the bottom of the screen for it. good friend of ours, and we've been raising money for him for the past couple of weeks, Reuben Christopher Haynes. I got a chance to talk to him about a week ago, and he is doing well, in spite of everything that's happening to him right now, health-wise, occupationally, etc. A friend of his is letting Reuben stay with them until he can, kind of sort out where he's going and what all he's doing. And we've had a campaign going on Give, Send, Go now for a couple of weeks. We've raised a pretty good amount of money. And for everybody who's contributed, thank you. And for everybody who's thinking about doing it, you've still got a little bit of time. I don't want to close it out. I'm trying to figure out how to be fair about this. I don't want to be accused of holding on to something that's intended for somebody else. But on the other hand, I want to give it as much time as possible. I'm thinking that probably the monies that we raise. Robert, we're going to get to that point in just a few minutes, but y'all hang on to that. Yes, you are still here, daggone it. Speaking of the man himself, yes, sir, you are. So I'm thinking about holding this Give, Send, Go open for a few more days, and then get the money to Reuben as quickly as possible, because he's got needs, and we want to try and help with them as much as we can. And for everybody who has given, you've been extraordinarily generous. So, for that, thank you very much. And so, yeah, I'm going to run a cryon across the bottom of the screen. So if you happen to see this, and I realize that, we have a handful of people watching right now live, but there will be people who see this in repetition. So if you do see this and you feel like you want to contribute, please help this good man out. He's going through a fairly rough time in his life right now. And we're trying to find a way as we can here on this show and in other places to help him as much as possible. So that said, let me get that baby scrolling across. There we go. Now we got that rolling across the screen. So there's that. And like I said, for everybody who's contributed so far, thank you very much. I genuinely appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I know Reuben's going to appreciate it. And let's raise as much money for this good man as we can. I mean, if the shoe were on the other foot, he'd be doing the same for us. And I have absolutely no doubt about that at all. So, gosh, what a week it has been. And what a week it continues to be internationally, domestically. There is news everywhere. Anybody that makes the statement that, I wish there was something going on in the world because right now I find life very boring, you need to walk up to that person and gib smack them in the back of the head. Now, if you don't know what a gib smack is, I recommend you go watch the television show NCIS. And particularly, you need to watch it when Mark Harmon was still on the show in the character of Leroy Jethro Gibbs, because when one of his teammates would say something dumb, he would cup his hand like this, walk up behind them, and smack them in the back of the head. So we just started calling it a gib smack. So when you hear someone say to you that, they really wish something were going on in the world because they find life to be very boring, just gib smack the back of their head, because those people need to be, woken up. And a gib smack is a good way to do that. Last Saturday when we got together, there was stuff breaking in the Soviet Union, and that's finally all settled itself out. And I'm still trying to figure out in toto what the net, yeah, exactly. I wish it'd be a little less exciting in the world. I could deal with some boredom for a little while. Good grief. Just crazy. But when we were on last week, literally, we were on the air and stuff was going on in Russia. And now that has all finally settled itself out. But for those of you who may not have had a chance to find out what was going on, let me recap it for you. And then I'm going to show you some tweets that I find kind of interesting. The 2-minute drill on this goes something like this. The Russian forces who are fighting in Ukraine are supplementing their troops in the regular army by using a mercenary group called Wagner Group. Okay. And it's headed up by a fellow named Viktor Prigozhin. Well, Prigozhin has a lot of interesting backstory, but one thing he is he's loud and he's brash and he's everything else. Well, he's had a running feud going with the head of the Soviet military, a guy by the name of Shigoyu. And finally, it came to a head And if you believe the reports, Prigozhin took about 5,000 of his men from this town in the south of Russia called Rostov-on-Don, went up a highway, and basically the upshot was he's going to go up there and kick Shugua's ass, okay? Because he didn't like the fact that certain things were going on. He didn't feel like he was getting enough munitions. He didn't feel like he was getting enough of this, enough of that. And he went so far as to accuse the Russian military of launching rockets into positions where his Wagner group men were at, getting some of them killed. So somewhere along the way, as he's driving up the highway, a phone call comes in, I guess, or whatever, from Alexander Lukashenko, who's the president of Belarus, which if you're looking at it on a map, Belarus is directly north of Ukraine. It sits right beside of Russia. So it's kind of like if you're making a counterclockwise move, it goes Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, something like that. Basically, the story goes that Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, went to Putin and said, look, I owe you a favor anyway from back in 21 when you kind of saved me from a coup. Let me see what I can do here. See if I can talk, push this guy down. Talk to Prigozhin and see if I can get him to see reason here. So basically that's what happens. Now, that gets to this tweet, which is from Mario Nafal. It goes like this. The past day has been wild and confusing. We've covered events from the start. Here's what happened since the, quote, coup failed. We know that at least 15 Russian soldiers were killed during this incident. That's still kind of confirmed. The bulk of them being from helicopters shot down by Wagner forces. Again, not confirmed. All criminal charges against Prigozhin, the Wagner chief, had been dropped. During negotiations with President of Belarus, Lukashenko, and Prigozhin, charges in the leadership of the Russian military changes were not discussed. Wagner fighters will return to their bases and sign contracts. Prigozhin will be transferred to Belarus as part of the deal struck between Prigozhin, Lukashenko, and Putin. No one seems to know current whereabouts of Prigozhin. However, that's been updated. He is now indeed in Belarus, if reports are to be from international papers to be believed. And Zelensky's office reported that they were disappointed with Prigozhin's decision. Oh, gee, imagine that. The Ukrainians are upset that there's not a coup going on in Russia. Wow. I'm sure he's butthurt. As far as I'm concerned, the little pipsqueak can stay butthurt for all I care. Idiot. He's draining our military and our money. Well, no, he's not draining it. Our political leaders are being stupid enough to drain our military money to help his sorry ass. But anyway, that's generally what happened last Saturday. Now, Western media, and this part I think ought to be commented on. Western media is so desperate to propagandize against the Russians, they start calling it a coup. It's a coup. It's a coup. Putin's going to get taken down. Putin's been weakened. Putin, oh my God, it's going to be, and then, it's like, it's a case of like, oh, what's the term I'm looking for? It's just like, climax denied. I mean, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're practically, and the press is practically having an orgasm over what was happening. It's like, and then they had a case of blue balls. Okay, it's Saturday. Well, I mean, you can always turn away and not watch. But anyway, that's basically what happened. Now, here's the part that no one can quite figure out, and I think it's quite amusing. Under the terms of this deal, Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner group, and some of his troops are going to go to Belarus, just north of Ukraine. If you look at it on a map, well, thank you. Millicent, I do my best. What can I tell you? They went from near orgasm to blue balls, and that's about the equivalent of what happened to the press. But under the terms of this deal, Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner group, and some of his men go north to Belarus. They're going to basically, Prigozhin's living in exile. He and Putin go back a long way together. Putin didn't want to kill him for various reasons, and I think one of them legitimately is the possibility that he doesn't want Wagner troops pissed off at him, and then start turning on Russian forces. Okay, I get that. I understand. That makes sense. Yeah, it was a big nothing burger. But there is one aspect to it. if you look at it on a map, the border of Belarus is about maybe 70, 80 miles from Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. And if you stop and think about it, it would take not a lot to basically pin the capital of Ukraine in a pincer move. You'd have the Wagner forces and Prigozhin coming down from the north, and you'd have the Russians coming up from the south. You could squeeze Kiev right in the middle. It wouldn't take much to do it. And somebody pointed out that fact. Take a look at this. Putin scammed the world by faking the coup to fool NATO and eliminate disloyal, high-ranking military inside Russia without protest from other officials. The ploy also duped Ukraine into advancing, thinking Russia was weak and thus revealing the entire offensive. If that's what he did, it was a military genius tactic that will go down as one of the greatest moves in military history. Now, some of that I disagree with, okay? I'm not sure about trying to fool NATO, but it has been reported in various places that certain members of the Russian military who didn't really stand up and stridently try to fight against the supposed coup have been, shall we say, reassigned or let go or retired. So maybe there's something to all this. Maybe this was a good old-fashioned fake out job, a shuck and jive, a con. You know, how elaborate it got, or maybe Putin used the situation to his advantage. Maybe, Prigozhin was legitimately pissed off and just realized, if ever there was a time for me to test what's going on inside my country and find out what NATO's up to, this might be the occasion. Let's see what happens if I put a few wheels in motion. So anyway, that's what's going on over in Russia. And again, I find the whole thing fascinating to watch. I really do. I sit and I ask myself the question, and I guess people ask me all the time, family members of mine, when do I think this is going to end? I literally have no idea. Because it seems like no matter what advances the Russians make, the West, Western Europe, the United States is, putting more money, more arms, more munitions in. And the only real end result of this is that a lot of good people on both sides are going to get killed. And I've got my political opinions about what's going on in Ukraine from any number of different angles. But my one prayer is this, that whatever's going on over there stops. And I mean this in all sincerity. There are good young men and good families are being destroyed, literally, all in the name of a proxy war against Vladimir Putin. And it's a crying shame. But lest you think that, Russia is the only thing going on internationally in the world right now. And Lee, I think you got a really good point here. If he doesn't fall out of a window soon, it was a false flag to move the troops. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There are a lot of people of that opinion, and I don't disagree with you. I really don't. So we'll see. I was just getting ready to say, lest you think that Russia is the only thing going on in the world, there are some other things happening internationally. By the way, did you know France is burning to the ground? Now, I know some of you out there going, yes, my prayers are answered. The French. Oh, wait, no, I'm not supposed to say that. Yes, you're right. You're not supposed to say that, daggone it. We're supposed to love our fellow man, even the French. But it turns out that there has been rioting going on in France now for going on 4 days. There's an old joke that the French are revolting. Well, the double edge to that is, I personally don't like them, but they're always revolting about something. This one's kind of legitimate. Take a look at this. This is from the UK Daily Mail, one of my favorite places. And more than 1,300 arrested overnight as rioters clash with police around France. Rioting raged in cities around France for a fourth night despite massive police deployment, with cars and buildings set ablaze and stores looted as family and friends prepared to bury the 17-year-old killed by a police officer that sparked the unrest. France's Interior Ministry announced the new figure for arrests around the country, where 45,000 police officers fanned out in a so far unsuccessful bid to quell violence. Despite the appeal to parents by President Emmanuel Macron to keep their children at home, street clashes between young protesters and police raged on. About 2,500 fires were set and stores were ransacked. There's one more part about this I wanted to get to. Let's see. Still, the damage was widespread from Paris to Marseille and Lyon, and even still far away in the French territories. Just amazing. 17-year-old named Nahel's killing was stirred up long simmering tensions between police and young people in housing projects who struggle with poverty, unemployment, and racial discrimination. The subsequent rioting is the worst France has seen in years and puts new pressure on Mr. Macron, who blames social media for fueling the violence. Anger erupted in the Paris suburb after Nahel's death there on Tuesday and quickly spread nationwide. Early on Saturday, firefighters in Nanterre extinguished blazes set by protesters that left scorched remains of cars strewn around the streets. In the neighborhoods around Colombes, protesters overturned bins and used them for makeshift barricades. Unbelievable. It's terrible. And I hate to say this, the first thing I thought of when I read about this, the George Floyd riots. I'm not saying that young people in France aren't feeling the effects of poverty and they aren't feeling the effects of unemployment and possible discrimination. I'm not a French person. I'm not there. I don't know. I'm just reading from the outside looking in. But it wouldn't surprise me terribly if there were some people on the other side of this thing seriously using this for purposes of instigating. And it's terrible. It's just genuinely terrible. It really is. And I agree with you, Millicent. I've been to France. It's been a very, very long time. And even though I was there looking at everything through the eyes of a teenager, France and Paris are beautiful. We're talking old architecture, old neighborhoods, sites that, the world hopefully will get the chance to see for a very, very long time. But it's an amazing city and an amazing country that's been through a lot and has thousands of years of history. And to see this sort of thing happening just genuinely breaks the heart. It really does. I'm trying to be kind. I'm trying to be serious. And Robert, you gotta drop this. I love my audience. I genuinely do. Yeah, well, it is. It's scary. And I don't know that they're gonna get a hold of this thing anytime soon. That's genuinely the frightening part to me. I mean, I've never considered Emmanuel Macron a particularly strong leader. I consider him to be a sleazy little worm. I mean, to me, he's fundamentally no different than a lot of European politicians in my book. He's very transactional. There's very little principle to the man. And he is all about maintaining a system of, socialist government that, benefits a few and, craps on the many. And, I was hoping that Marie Le Pen would defeat him in the most recent presidential election. She got closer than she did before, but still not enough. And I don't know what it takes for France to change, because these sort of things, these riots, the widespread poverty, the problems, they've been there for decades. Yet the French keep voting in the very same politicians, that create the issue. Yeah. 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 Agree. Agree. Very sad. And I mean, I don't know what it takes for France. I mean, there are certain European countries right now that I see, just from my perspective, I see green shoots of hope. Italy, Greece, they had an election where, man, they elected probably one of the most conservative governments that they've had in Greece in decades. Oh, and here's something nobody's talking about. Millicent, you bring up a really good point. Poverty is getting worse due to mass migration and environmental policy. You ain't wrong, sister. You ain't wrong about that. Macron has been one of these people that has been pushing for open borders to his nation for a long time. As a matter of fact, he's trying to get everybody else to take in as many migrants from other nations as possible. And I'm sorry, you're destroying your own culture, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Generally speaking. But like I say, there are green shoots of hope. There really are. Yeah. Yeah, and the migration is it's absolutely true. They've changed the nationality of the country. You know, I don't think that I could go to London right now and recognize London the way I saw it decades ago, because I don't think you have that many native English in England anymore. Just as an example, and the same thing's going on in France. Yeah, and Millicent, your nation is, and I don't want to agitate anything with the statement that I'm about to make, but I don't think I'm too far off. Y'all are sitting on a potential powder keg down under. And I really do mean that, because I agree with you. Your political leadership moves one way and the people want freedom. And y'all are cool people down there in Australia. I've always found you guys to be cool. Yeah. Robert, you bring up a real good point. Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very true indeed. Ah. Yeah. The news around the world right now, some moments, like I said, you read things and you're like, all right, I've got reason to hope. Then you see what's going on in France. You're like, man. But let's turn our attentions domestic for a little while. For those of you who are just joining, my name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. This is the 4th of July edition of Front Porch Brunch, where we are reviewing news from the previous week, and we're talking about what it all means, and just trying to make sense of it all and laugh at it when it's appropriate. And frankly, given the stupidity of most of the people involved, we're laughing a lot. Fox News. Fox News. Man, talk about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Now, for those of you around the world, Millicent, I'm thinking of you in specific, that are not aware of what has been going on at Fox News, as you know, oh, bless you, dear. Bless you, Millicent. You are a sweetheart. Ah, love you, darling. Love you. For those of you maybe watching internationally that are not aware of what's going on here as far as journalism in America or what passes for it, Tucker Carlson was a longtime mainstay on Fox News. Well, he was taken off the air. He was not fired. He was taken off the air by Fox shortly after the settlement between Fox News and Dominion Voting Systems, where Fox News paid out almost $750 million to settle their lawsuit with Dominion. Well, when they took Tucker off the air, what many expected would happen actually happened. And the ratings on Fox News, particularly for their 8 p.m. time slot, and even for all their prime time, went right in the toilet. And in part, there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, I could sit here and pontificate on that all day long. But one of the reasons is Tucker was not necessarily a conservative, although on a lot of issues he is. He's a populist conservative. And that's something a little different than most of the people, who have primetime shows at Fox. And also, he was bringing in a much younger demographic because, Tucker might be in his early 50s, but the dude's pretty cool. He's pretty hip. He's pretty with it, and he is a genuine talent. Well, Fox pulled him off the air. Their ratings went in the toilet. So everybody's been speculating what are they going to do to fix this. Well, rumors have been flying, and they finally announced this week what they're going to do. And this is an article, again, from the UK Daily Mail. Fox News announces Jesse Waters will take over the 8 p.m. time slot that fired Tucker Carlson used to host. And it goes on to tell how the lineup is going to go. What they had before this was they had Tucker at 8, Sean Hannity at 9, and Laura Ingraham at 10, and then Greg Gutfeld would come on 11 o'clock. Well, the way they're going to do the lineup now is they're going to have Laura Ingraham move down to the 7 p.m. slot, which I'm pretty sure, I mean, it's not like she and I've had conversations about this, but I can't really see her complaining about it. It actually helps her out. I mean, as I understand it, she has a young family. I'm sure she'd like to get home earlier in the day or earlier in the evening, what have you. So they're going to have Laura Ingraham at 7, Jesse Waters at 8, Sean Hannity at 9. And like I said in my video this week, Sean Hannity is going to retire from that 9 p.m. time slot. He's had that thing going back really to the days that Fox started the network when he and the late Alan Combs used to host their show together. So they're going to have Sean Hannity at 9. Greg Gutfeld will be at 10. Okay. Now, I've got various thoughts about this whole thing. And let me just start first with what I said in my video. I'm happy for Jesse Waters. I mean, this guy's in his early 40s to be given really the best time slot on Fox News to host a show and be given the opportunity to, make your statements, expound on your politics, have on guests, have discussions, build an audience. It's great for him. It really is. But my word of warning to Jesse Waters is just like anybody else that works at Fox News right now, particularly if they want to be, edgy, conservative, that sort of thing, is just remember what they did to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson was the stick that stirred the drink. Tucker Carlson brought in ratings and money for Fox News, and the Murdochs had no compunction whatsoever of yanking his butt off the air. And I think that's going to be the problem for Jesse Waters. No matter how talented he is, no matter how much potential he's got, no matter anything else, he will never be able to fulfill that potential. He will never be able to grow that show into what it could be, because he's always going to have in the back of his mind, looking over his shoulder going, I wonder if Rupert's going to be mad about this comment. I wonder if this CEO, at Fox is going to be upset about, something I said. I mean, they're all running scared over there. I mean, I'm not kidding. I would love to be a fly on the wall to hear the conversations that are going on inside Fox News right now, because you can't tell me that everybody in one form or another is not walking around on eggshells. I mean, even Sean Hannity, who's been there, basically when the walls were built around the place, you can't tell me he's not wondering. Now, Hannity is a little bit different animal for different reasons. No, Robert, I agree with you. You're absolutely right, dude. You are absolutely right. I mean, Fox's ratings, while still high, people realized after the 2020 election what Fox News is. And, their ratings are going to continue to drop. I mean, and this is no slam on Jesse Waters. He is a very talented on-air personality. He's good at what he does in his own way with his own style. But, he's not going to be able to do what Tucker did. First of all, it's not Tucker Carlson. Okay. And again, I'm not trying to be unfair to Jesse Waters, nor am I trying to be unfair to Tucker Carlson. They're two different individuals. They're two different styles. But Jesse Waters is never going to be able to bring back all the people that Fox News lost when they pulled Tucker off the air. And Robert, you bring up another really valid point. I hadn't quite gotten to it yet. Bad management. Yeah. The issue at Fox News is not the talent. The issue is not necessarily their opinions. The issue at Fox News is the fact that Fox News wants to be the conservative network without letting the conservatives be conservative. They want to have an audience of, right-leaning, moderate to right-leaning folks, and not really let moderate to right-leaning folks hear from people who are moderate to right-leaning. Now, don't get me wrong. Laura Ingram's a conservative. Sean Hannity's a conservative. Waters is, yeah, they're conservative or libertarian. And I say libertarian because that's really Gutfeld. I wouldn't call Gutfeld a conservative. He might have a conservative take on a certain issue, but I wouldn't call him an overall conservative. He's definitely libertarian. But yeah, they won't back up their people. They will not back them up at all. And it's a crying shame. And it's gonna, I agree with Robert about this, and other people have made this statement, that Fox News is going to continue to bleed viewers. I mean, when it gets to the point that MSNBC is beating you in the ratings at the 8 p.m. time slot, and among the most important demographic, 25 to 54-year-olds, that you've owned that demographic for years as Fox News, when it gets to the point MSNBC is beating you, you got a serious problem. And in the case of Fox News, it's a problem of their own making. They've done this to themselves. They have absolutely screwed themselves. And for what? Because Rupert and his sons thought Tucker was getting too big for his britches? Really? Let him be as big as he wants to be, rake in the money, and enjoy it. And count the cash and shut up about it. But some people never learn. So yeah, this is Fox's proposed solution. And I wish Jesse Waters the best. I really do. I hope he and the others succeed, as much and go as high as they possibly can. I just don't think they're going to be allowed to. I just don't believe it. And it's not because of them. It's because of the management of Fox News. It's because of the ownership. And I don't know if they went to any other network, if it would get any better for them in that regard. I think Tucker, and for those of you who are not aware, Tucker has now kind of got I don't know if you call it a show, but he's posting on Twitter. And he's had about 7 or 8 of them now. And every time he does a post, he's getting multi-millions of views. He's doing like let's just say anywhere from 7 minutes to like a 12-minute clip. And he posts it on his Twitter page, which I think is great. I really do. I think it gives him a chance to be communicating his ideas, what he's thinking about the issues. I also think it expands Twitter's reach. But I think he's got the right idea. I was watching a clip this morning from Megan Kelly. Megan Fox, I kind of got on the brain. Not that Megan Fox. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, Millicent, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. He is doing well on Twitter. He is. And Leah, you're not the only one that thinks this. I mean, when you got a company like Pfizer that's dropping millions of dollars in advertising on Fox, you kind of got to wonder if he didn't piss off the wrong person. They went to the Murdochs and said, we're paying you this kind of money, and this is the crap treatment we're getting by your people. You may be right, dear. You may be absolutely right. Yeah, I'm thinking of the author. Because that's something we might get into in Hodgepodge too. I hadn't planned on talking about it, but you know what? It's definitely worth bringing up if time allows it, because Megan Fox is getting the shaft by YouTube in a big way. But going back to Tucker, he's posting these 7 to 12-minute videos on his Twitter page, and I think it's great. I mean, and now I remember my train of thought. I got totally derailed there for a second. Megyn Kelly has her own podcast now, which she, streams live on the internet. Independent journalism is going to be the way. It's is going to be the way for people to go. When you have places like Twitter or any place on the internet, really, if you've got the ability and the resources to put it together. Megyn Kelly puts together a fabulous show. I mean, I haven't gotten to watch a lot of it, but I've seen some of it, and the production quality is great. The guests she brings on are fabulous. She's free to give her opinion without having to look over her shoulder and wondering whether she's going to piss off a boss. She's her own boss. Tucker is his own boss. I mean, regardless of how this thing turns out between he and Fox News, haggling over getting him out of the contract, I think that, I think independent journalism is the way they're going to go. So this is going to be what happens with Fox News. I'm going to keep an eye on it. I think everybody is, because, here's a question that I've got in the long run. Does this hasten the demise of cable news? And when I say this, I mean the whole Tucker Carlson being removed from Fox News the way he was, Fox News handling it the way they did, Fox News shuffling the chairs on the Titanic. Does what happened to Tucker hasten the decline and ultimately the end of cable news as we know it? I mean, it's not in real good shape to begin with. And now when you have the internet and other places being able to supplement, or in some cases surpass, what cable news can offer in terms of information, yeah, I think that's a legitimate question. I mean, Culture Casino and I got into this discussion the other night, and if you didn't get the chance to see it, he was my guest for Chatting on the Porch. And I asked him, I was like, how big of a threat, and I did this in the context of Hollywood, but the same could be said of the news media in general. How big is a threat is the individual social media content creator to Hollywood or big time news organizations? It is existential, because they know that me sitting here with my cheap surplus Ukrainian equipment and a camera in front of me and folks out there willing to watch, I'm a bigger threat to them versus what they're able to produce on their own. Yeah. And Robert, good point. Yeah, like the ads are going to change the reality. It's not. It's not going to do it. All they're trying to do is hang on to whatever advertising revenue they still got left. And the more those ratings sink, the less money they're going to have from advertisers, because advertisers are not going to want to be at Fox. Yeah. Going back to talking about Megan Fox a little earlier. Yeah. So, yeah, and Leah, good point. Interesting to see how many people drop. Yeah, that would be. I'd love to know that. I mean, you can see it in the viewer count, how many viewers they're getting a night. But yeah, I'd love to know, like their Fox digital streaming service they got. I'd love to know how many they lost. That would be a good question to ask. But yeah, this is a fascinating story to follow. I think it's going to be really, really interesting. So, where are we? It's 11:15 Eastern time on July the 1st. We are now officially halfway through the year, and we got a wonderful audience this morning for Front Porch Brunch. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. We've got people on the water watching this. We've got people around the world watching this. We got people in good old US of A watching this, and I'm happy for everybody who's here. So cheers to you. And no, Millicent, I'm out of tea right now, unfortunately. So agua it will have to be. And I don't have my Bloody Mary mix, so there you go. So what else has been going on in the world that ought to be mentioned? Well, it is the end of June, and in America, that means the Supreme Court finishes its term. And the past couple of years have been extraordinarily interesting, especially and ever since Justice Amy Coney Barrett was put on the Supreme Court. confirmed by the Senate. Now, I'm not saying she was necessarily the life of the party, and that's not what I'm getting at, but her nomination and her confirmation, yeah, another reason to be happy that the year's almost over. Pride Month is done. We have survived the month of holy obligation, according to Mike Harlow. Shout out to Mike Harlow, by the way. But the Supreme Court has been taking on a lot more significance because finally what's happened to the liberals is what's happened to the conservatives back in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. And it's this. In the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, there were a significant number of judicial liberals on the U.S. Supreme Court, and they started handing down decisions that, would make conservatives just tear their hair out. So from the 70s, 80s, and 90s on, conservatives worked trying to get, certain presidents elected, certain, members of the Senate elected, etc., understanding the judicial process. And all that finally culminated in the presidency of Donald Trump, where he got, by various circumstances, to put three, I still can't get used to cameras. Three Supreme Court justices on the court: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. And the net effect of that is starting to be felt. Now, people keep saying there's a 6-3 conservative majority on the court. They lean conservative. I wouldn't say they're totally conservative. It's more like three of them are conservatives and three of them are kind of mushy corporatist middle of the roaders. Those would be Barrett, Kavanaugh, and Roberts, depending on what issue is brought before them and they decide on it. That said, however, there have been some rulings that have came out at the end of this week that have sort of validated all the hard work that for decades people have put in trying to get, judicial conservatives on the Supreme Court. So let's start with one of them. And this was the big one. Supreme Court rules that race-based affirmative action is unconstitutional. This is from the Washington Times. Race-infused affirmative action programs violate the Constitution's guarantees of equal treatment. The Supreme Court ruled Thursday in a pair of monumental decisions striking down policies used by major colleges and universities to try to add more Black and Hispanic students to their ranks. The ruling does not ban the mention of race in student applications or block a school from evaluating a candidate's experience with race, either as a personal hurdle or inspiration, as part of an admissions decision. The court said schools can no longer defend policies that claim to try to find the right racial mix of students for an incoming class. Such policies reduce students to the color of their skin, the justices said in the 6-3 ruling. Now, I want to just back up and give a little bit of broader context. Back in 2003, in a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled, yes, you could indeed use race to determine whether or not you should admit somebody to a college or university in America. And the irony in that decision was that Sandra Day O'Connor, who wound up being the fifth vote to make it happen, made the statement that it's going to reach a point in America, probably in about 25 years, where we're no longer going to be using affirmative action for admissions into college on the grounds either A, we're not going to need it, or B, it's going to be judicially struck down. Well, she had the right idea. She was just off by about 5 years. And frankly, this is probably one of the best decisions to come out of this term. Now, there's a couple of them that were made that I'm not real happy about, which we may talk about that here momentarily. But this is probably one of the best decisions that's ever been made in a long time, laying aside the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. The reason I say it's probably one of the best decisions that's ever been made is, I want to see the day in America where all we do is, and that is a good point, Robert. Good point. I forgot to bring that up, but you're absolutely right. The military was exempted from this ruling. The military schools, Air Force Academy, West Point, etc. But I want to get to the point in this country where we're not worried about the color of somebody's skin. I did a video earlier this week talking about this decision. And I played a clip from the I Have a Dream speech that Martin Luther King Jr. gave in 1963 in front of the Lincoln Memorial at the height of the Civil Rights Movement. And one of the lines that I pulled and played in that video was, I have a dream that someday my 4 children will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And I make the argument that what the Supreme Court did in this decision just took us a huge step forward to seeing Dr. King's vision become a reality. We're going to judge you on the content of your character. We're going to judge you on the merits of who you are as a student to determine whether or not you should be allowed admission to our college or our university. To me, that should be the only criteria. I don't care if you're a man. I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care if you're white or if you're black or what color of skin you are. I don't care what country you come from. I don't care about any of that. Are you the best person to be let into this college or university? Or let's just take it one step further. And maybe this is coming, where affirmative action is not used either in the private or public sector for hiring. That's what I'm really hoping for. Oh yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that here in just one second, Leah. Hang on, darling. I promise you. I tell you what, I love my audience this morning. My God, you all are all over it. God, you guys are great. I mean, it's like y'all were reading my mind when I was putting together my lineup of topics, etc. And yeah, you guys are all over it. So yeah, we're gonna get to it. Hang on, but let me finish up some things from this article from the Washington Times. Just a few quotes. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing the key opinion, said students must be treated on the basis of their experiences as an individual and not on the basis of race. Quote, many universities have too long done just the opposite, and in doing so, they have concluded wrongly that the touchstone of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin. Our constitutional history does not tolerate that choice. And go a little bit further into that article. There's one more quote from Roberts that I think is absolutely true. Let me find it here real fast. He says, in the majority's opinion, the entire point of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment is that treating someone differently because of their skin color is not like treating them differently because they are from a city or from a suburb or because they play the violin poorly or well. And the other comment, the quote that I want to read is from Justice Clarence Thomas. And you can't tell me that when this decision got handed down was not one of the best days of his judicial life. You find it real fast. This is from Clarence Thomas. Quote, I am painfully aware of the social and economic ravages which have befallen my race and all who suffer discrimination. I hold out enduring hope that this country will live up to its principles so clearly enunciated in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, that all men are created equal, are equal citizens, and must be treated equally before the law. Yeah, this is probably one of the best decisions the Supreme Court's handed down since Dobbs last year. And it's going to have ramifications for years to come, and I think it's going to wind up being to the betterment of our country. But you might want to check the connection settings in the Google Home app. Oh, infernal Google speaker thingy that I never use. It occasionally does that to me. Sorry, folks. When people say you're hearing voices, you have no idea. As I say, people do not agree with me in my assessment. And I'll give you one person who gave a take that everybody is roasting her alive for it. This comes from the Twitter page of Erica Marsh, and she posted this almost immediately after the decision came down on the affirmative action case. Quote, Today's Supreme Court decision is a direct attack on Black people. No Black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system, which is exactly why affirmative action programs were needed. Today's decision is a travesty. Now, I will say this by way of update. Erica Marsh, who is worked for the Biden administration trying to get him elected and all that good stuff, is very much a lefty among other things. But that opinion has to be one of the most demeaning, racist comments I've ever heard. Now, she tries to clarify it later on and say, hey, I was trying to get people. Matter of fact, let me find it real fast. I just want to be fair here. Not that she really deserves it, but I'll try to be fair. And she says, I want to sincerely apologize for my previous tweet regarding affirmative action. I now realize it did not effectively convey my intended message and has been co-opted by ultra MAGA propagandizers. Now I've been promoted to ultra MAGA. Did you know that I've been promoted to an ultra MAGA propagandizer? You must be too if you're listening to this show. We are ultra MAGA propagandizers. A new title for me. The bow and the chapeau, the fine fella in the fedora, ultra MAGA propagandizer. Yeah, she's a former field organizer and even worked for Obama Foundation. I mean, that's as much as I know about her, Robert. I'm like you, I couldn't find that much either. My aim was to express concerns about the recent Supreme Court decision and its potential impact on equal opportunities. I want to make it clear that I strongly believe in creating a fair and level playing field for everyone, regardless of their race or ethnicity. I understand the historical and ongoing challenges faced by Black individuals. I recognize the importance of affirmative action programs in addressing systemic inequalities. I am committed to learning from this mistake and will be more mindful in the future. I genuinely apologize for any hurt I may have caused, and I'm determined. But she didn't say I was wrong. Oh yeah, that's an even better title, Robert. Ultra mega MAGA extreme. I love my audience. I genuinely do. Y'all are so creative. But yeah, her tweet, as far as I'm concerned, is, again, probably one of the most insulting things you'll ever read. It really is. No Black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system. Miss Marsh, do you not realize how insulting that you are being to African Americans all across this country? I mean, think about the bigotry of low expectations that you're engaging in here. That if it weren't for a government program, and if it weren't for your caring enough about the issue, or not just you, let's just say liberals in general, progressives in general, okay? If it weren't for you, Black people wouldn't be able to succeed in this country on their own. My God, how little you think of your fellow countrymen. How little you think of the African American community. I'll tell you what, I'll do you one better than that. For those of you in the United States watching this right now and you're in chat, do me a favor. Drop me the name of an African American who succeeded without affirmative action. I could name a few. I'll start it off. I'll start it off right now. Dr. Thomas Sowell. Quincy Jones. Jesse Owens. That's just a few right off the top of my head. They succeeded without the benefit of affirmative action. Because if you know anything about the history of affirmative action, you'll remember, Jackie Robinson, great example. Great example. He didn't have affirmative action. He just happened to be the best baseball player that Branch Rickey of the Brooklyn Dodgers found at the time, and he wanted him playing baseball. Didn't matter to him the color of his skin. Yeah, so just drop Leah, others, if you know of some famous Black people who have succeeded without affirmative action, please drop them in the chat. I mean, I could keep on dropping names, all Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver. Exactly. I mean, yeah. And you're right, Millicent. I mean, that woman's comment is the most insulting thing I've ever had. Yeah, it's a take, all right. You know, I've never seen anything. Why is it? I mean, seriously, why is it that liberals and progressives seem to believe that if it weren't for their helping, people can't make it without them? Don't we want to raise up a population of people? I don't care if it's white kids. I don't care if it's black kids. I don't care if it's Hispanic kids. I don't care if it's Asian kids. I don't care who it is. Don't we want to raise up a population of strong and compassionate individuals that have the talent to succeed on their own? Now, don't get me wrong. I know there are circumstances that affect everybody's lives, and I don't deny any of that. Okay. And I don't deny the fact that slavery and racism are a horrible, ugly stain on the history of the United States. But at some point, get over it. Stop using it as a damn crutch. Say, I am a creature created in the eyes of God, and I can do amazing and wonderful things, and I will achieve and succeed to the level of my talent and ability, and maybe I'll even go higher than that. Howdy. Howdy. What was that? Good to have you here. Okay, I got a clarification. No, that would mean that someone capable of thinking for themselves. That doesn't work. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Elites in this country, particularly of liberal or progressive nature, want to create a society full of people that are dumbed down and they are dependent. I don't want to give someone a fish. I want to teach them how to catch one because they'll never need me again. You know, I don't want people dependent upon me. I'm glad that they're in my life. I want them to be a part of my life, but I don't want them to feel like they're dependent on me. Not that I'm undependable. I'm a very reliable person, but that's not the point. I want to be there to help see people grow stronger and independent. And that's a good thing, but not so independent that we forget to be compassionate to our fellow man, which I don't think is the issue here. But this whole, no black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system, which is exactly why affirmative action is needed. No, affirmative action is not needed. Saw a clip this week. It was an interview from some years ago that Morgan Freeman did with Mike Wallace when Mike Wallace was still at 60 Minutes at CBS. And it started on the topic of Black History Month. And Mike Wallace said, "You really don't like that, do you?" He's like, "No, you can't reduce my history to 1 month." He said, "When do we get your history month?" He said, "Well, I don't have one. I'm Jewish." He said, "You want a Jewish history month?" He said, "No, I don't want one." He said, "Well, then I don't want a Black History Month." And then Mike Wallace swerved into the $1 million question. Then how do we end racism? And you know what Morgan Freeman's answer was? Stop talking about it. He said, "When I look at you, I am not going to call you a white man. I'm just going to say you're a man. When you look at me, I just want you to acknowledge that I'm a man, not a black man." He said, "That's how you stop racism." I didn't say forget about it. I said, just stop talking about it. Yeah. And this is so true. Absolutely so true. But yeah, you got it. There's a lot of reasons why I love Morgan Freeman. Don't always agree with him on everything, but in that moment, Millicent, Morgan Freeman was absolutely right. Absolutely right. But there's a couple other decisions that came down on Friday, and God, you talk about watching the heads explode, inside the White House, Biden's people, lefties all around the country. God, they just absolutely went nuts over something. 2 more decisions that came down. And I haven't really had a chance to peruse through them or look at the articles really in depth. So I'm kind of doing this for the first time myself. And I'll start with the Washington Examiner. This one's pretty good. Supreme Court sides with web designer who didn't want to create pro-LGBT messages. The Supreme Court Well, Millicent, hang on, darling. We'll get to that in a minute. The Supreme Court sided with a Colorado-based website designer on Friday who does not want to build wedding announcement websites for same-sex couples, holding that the state's anti-discrimination law would affect her business and violate her First Amendment rights. Justice Neil Gorsuch, who, by the way, of these new justices that have come on the court, he's probably my favorite, but I'll explain why later. Justice Neil Gorsuch authored a 6-3 majority opinion in 303 Creative versus Ellenis, holding, quote, the First Amendment prohibits Colorado from forcing the website designer to create expressive designs speaking messages with which the designer disagrees. A little further into the article. Colorado seeks to force an individual to speak in ways that align with its views, but defy her conscience about a matter of major significance, Gorsuch added. Gorsuch's majority opinion was joined by Republican-appointed justices, while liberal justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson dissented. And this is Gorsuch writing further, under Colorado's logic, the government may compel anyone who speaks for pay on a given topic to accept all commissions on that same topic, no matter the underlying message, if the topic somehow implicates a customer's statutory protected trait. Taken seriously, that principle would allow government to force all manner of artists, speechwriters, and others whose services involve speech to protect what they do not believe on pain of penalty. It's a very well written opinion, very well written, and the point is perfectly valid. And that is, just because you're coming into it to someone and you want them to design something for you does not mean that someone's beliefs, religious or otherwise, should be ignored. Because let's keep this in mind. This is a private transaction, okay? Someone walks into my storefront, they want me to do something for them. They want me to do something for them that violates my personal beliefs, religious or otherwise. I should have the right to refuse that service. If you take Colorado's anti-discrimination law, that would basically try to override my ability to say no. And the Supreme Court said, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that to somebody. You don't get to override their rights of conscience or their religious belief just because you want them to engage with you in a business service. So, oh yeah. You want to talk about head spinning around. I think Robert, you're absolutely right. Oh man, Biden, everybody on the left, they are screaming bloody murder over this. This is holy water getting thrown on Linda Blair and The Exorcist. And their head's like, oh, I'm not even going to try that because that hurts too much. But you get the idea. The next thing I'm expecting when a Supreme Court decision comes down, I'm expecting like pea green soup to be spit out of some liberal's mouth. That's the next thing I'm waiting to see happen. And I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you on this. And I can understand why, Leah. I really do. You should have the right on the basis of conscience or religious belief and or both. That if someone comes in and wants to employ your services, you should be able to say, no, I really don't feel comfortable doing this. I feel like this in my conscience before God, I do not feel comfortable doing this. I feel like this violates my beliefs. Why should that freedom of religious expression not be protected? Now, Millicent, okay. I'm going to put this one up here and read it for what it is. I love how people are so mad at Christians and about Christianity, but won't swing their punches at Muslims and don't seem to understand the free market means they can take their money elsewhere. Honey, you are absolutely right. I've said that I've got the smartest audience in the whole of the internet, and this comment right here proves why. Because she said in 3 lines what takes me 30. This is one of the reasons why I love my audience. Y'all get it. They can take their money elsewhere. An LGBTQ person does not have to go into this person's shop, but because they do, they're going to force them to do something that violates their religious conscience. And the Supreme Court said, nope, can't do that. Now, I didn't show her comment, but Millicent brought up something that the Supreme Court also did on Friday, which again is making heads explode because, you know, Biden's got all kinds of problems. This might have been the decision that made him spit up pea green soup like Linda Blair from The Exorcist. So take a look at this. This one's for you, Millicent. Supreme Court blocks student loan forgiveness in blow to Biden. Here's what to know about the ruling. This is from CBS News. The Supreme Court on Friday invalidated President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, ruling that a 2003 federal law does not allow the program to wipe out nearly $500 billion in debt. The 6-3 decision by the court's conservative majority derails a major campaign pledge by the president, denying relief to roughly 40 million Americans who stood to have up to $20,000 of their student loan debt wiped away under the plan. In a statement, the president said he believed the decision was wrong and disappointing. Biden then announced his administration will pursue debt relief through the Higher Education Act and has created a temporary on-ramp period. The court's ruling. Before striking down the plan, the Supreme Court said Missouri, one of the 6 states that challenged the lawfulness of the plan, had the right to sue, known as legal standing. That finding allowed the court to consider whether the Secretary of Education had the power to forgive student loan debt under a law known as the HEROES Act. The court, in a majority opinion authored by Chief Justice John Roberts, said the law does not grant the Secretary that authority. Quote, "We hold today that the Act allows the Secretary to waive or modify existing statutory or regulatory provisions applicable to financial assistance programs under the Education Act, not to rewrite the statute from the ground up. The economic and political significance of the loan forgiveness plan," Roberts wrote, "is staggering by any measure. Today, we have concluded that an instrumentality created by Missouri, governed by Missouri, answerable to Missouri, is indeed part of Missouri, that the words waive or modify do not mean completely rewrite, and that our precedent, old and new, requires the Congress to speak clearly before the Department Secretary can unilaterally alter large sections of the American economy." Roberts ended his opinion by noting that the disagreement among the court's members should not be mistaken for disparagement. It is important that the public not be misled either. Any such misperception would be harmful to the institution and the country. So they basically said that, no, sir, your Mr. Biden, your cabinet secretary does not have the right to just expand the parameters of a law so much that basically they are given the authority to waive someone's debt. I mean, that is staggering to me. I mean, I've heard of trying to pull the carpet along so you can get something under the rug, but that's just over the top, even by my understanding. Good grief. Just amazing to me. But no, the Supreme Court said, nope, can't do it. You don't have the power. Which brings up a valid point. If Biden thought this was such a good idea, hell, you had a Democrat majority in the House, had a Democrat majority in the Senate in the first 2 years. Why didn't you just get a law passed that said you can do that? Yet he didn't. And, much like his old boss Obama, well, we'll just use the law and kind of stretch it to do what we need to do. So there you go. So yeah, if you're a Supreme Court watcher, this has been an absolutely amazing week. Now, there was one decision that came down I'm not too happy about, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But I think the way the court ruled, they've actually set themselves up and set the country up for a continuation of aggravation, as I like to call it. And it was the Electors and Elections Clause case out of North Carolina. Basically, the upshot of it is they ruled that the court had the right to rule on the case and that state legislatures are not the final authority on matters related to federal elections, which is what the Constitution clearly says. I think that decision is a mistake. And I think that the 3 mushy middle justices, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Roberts, ruled with the liberals, and they did not do the country any favors in doing so. They should acknowledge clearly that the state legislatures are the final say on all matters related to federal elections, be it the drawing of districts or how you send electors to D.C. for the Electoral College. But that's just me. But laying that bad decision aside, most everything else the court did this term, especially at the end, I'm really happy with. We're finally starting to get back to some kind of constitutional sanity. My only worry, and I'm already seeing this is just me. My only worry about all this is that the left is already sowing the seeds of trying to do something 10, 15 years down the line. The court is not legitimate. I can't believe this court is out of control. This court has gone rogue. We've got to get this court. We've got to restore legitimacy to their decisions. Basically what they're doing is they're planting the seeds now so that later on they can get the court expanded and get a bunch of liberal judges on there and basically start overriding a conservative majority. That's exactly where this is headed. Just boggles the mind. I don't like the game. I play by the rules. I start being a progressive. What's the progressive do? They don't play harder than I do. They don't beat me by the established rules. They change the game. Yes, never ceases to amaze me. So that's the Supreme Court. And for those of you who are maybe popping in, this is Front Porch Brunch. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. And we are talking about, absolutely right, Millicent. Absolutely right. They don't play by the rules. They just change them as they go. But my name is Brian Trippett. This is Front Porch Brunch. We are reviewing some of the news from the previous week, and we have reached that portion of the show that I like to refer to as hodgepodge stew. Issues that aren't, and news items that aren't necessarily weighty. They aren't necessarily of critical national or international import, but they're kind of funny. And the one story that I want to bring up for Hodgepodge Stew before I get to the last thing that I really want to get in for this live stream is an update on the Bud Light boycott situation. Now, I'm not even going to bother going back to the origins of this thing, except to say this. Anheuser-Busch enters into a marketing contract with trans activist Dylan Mulvaney. Well, Dylan, ever since all this went down on April 1st, has been extraordinarily quiet until now. This week, it has reached the point where Dylan Mulvaney is pointing fingers at Anheuser-Busch. Anheuser-Busch is pointing fingers back at Dylan Mulvaney. They're trading comments in the press and on social media, and I am here for it because I think it is glorious. So Dylan Mulvaney went out on Instagram and posted a 4-minute video. I want to play parts of it because I've got various things to say about this, and I want to get y'all's take on some of this because some of this is really interesting. So let me get this thing pulled up real fast. And I'm going to stop this at various points because I want to bring in comments about this. So Dylan Mulvaney posts a video on Instagram, and it goes something like this.
Hi.
And the obligatory sip of beer to show that they're, really a beer drinker.
One thing I will not tolerate people saying about me is that I don't like beer, because I love beer and I always have. I built my platform on being honest with you, and what I'm about to tell you might sound like old news, but you know that feeling when you have something uncomfy like sitting on your chest? Well, that's how I feel right now. So this feels like the right thing to do. I took a brand deal with a company that I loved, and I posted a sponsored video to my page. And it must have been a slow news week, because the way that this ad got blown up, you would have thought I was like on a billboard or on a TV commercial or something major. But no, it was just an Instagram video. And the wildest part is that they also sent me one can with my face on it. You might have seen it. And funny story, I had the can around my house, but then I realized, wait, I need to protect this can. So I hid it somewhere, and now I can't find it because I hid it so well. But when I do find it, I feel like it needs to go in a museum, preferably behind bulletproof glass.
Okay, Dylan, you only need to put that can behind bulletproof glass if Kid Rock is hanging around the museum somewhere, okay? Short of that, I don't really think people are going to get that cranky about it, but okay, I digress. Let's get back to the video. Because the next set of comments get really interesting.
And you might be thinking, Dylan, why bring it up now? I'm bringing it up because what transpired from that video was more bullying and transphobia than I could have ever imagined.
Hold it. I have a question. How is the reaction of the beer drinking public hate or phobia or whatever, or bullying? Which I'll explain that point here in just a second, but I just want to put that out there for the start. So getting back to Dylan's little missive here.
And I should have made this video months ago, but I didn't. And I was scared, and I was scared of more backlash, and I felt personally guilty for what transpired. So I patiently waited for things to get better. But surprise, they haven't really.
Oh, truer words were never spoken than that comment. But we continue.
And I was waiting for the brand to reach out to me, but they never did.
Whoa! Hold up. Wait a minute. This is what I was getting ready to get to. Now, I want everybody to think about this for a second, because this has been going on now for 3 months as of yesterday. Okay. This all started on April the 1st. Now, for those of you maybe that don't remember how this went down, Anheuser-Busch enters into a market agreement, Dylan Mulvaney, vis-a-vis their vice president of marketing, this Allison Heinerschneid, who wants to modernize the marketing of Bud Light because it's gotten stale and fratty in her opinion, and we need to make it more inclusive and all that. So they go out, they hire Dylan Mulvaney. Okay. I don't think it's the smartest move in the world, but all right, they've got the right to do it. It's their company. Dylan does the ad. One ad, by the way. And on that point is actually true. But apparently, according to Dylan Mulvaney, Anheuser-Busch left Dylan hanging out to dry. Not a word from them to Dylan, according to Dylan. So let's continue this.
And for months now, I've been scared to leave my house. I have been ridiculed in public. I've been followed. And I have felt a loneliness that I wouldn't wish on anyone. And I'm not telling you this because I want your pity. I am telling you this because if this is my experience from a very privileged perspective, know that it is much, much worse for other trans people.
Hold on, Dylan. Nobody's got a problem with trans people. We may not agree with your choices, may not agree with your lifestyle decisions, may not agree with everything else, but no one's got a problem with trans people. So just tread carefully here. You've been doing fine up to this point, but you're about to make a mistake. But go ahead.
For a company to hire a trans person and then not publicly stand by them is worse, in my opinion, than not hiring a trans person at all.
Okay, I'm going to say something here. I absolutely agree with Dylan Mulvaney. Hey, but Anheuser-Busch, you hired Dylan. You got the backlash for it. And you left Dylan Mulvaney hanging out to dry. Okay. Now, let me say, what I don't really need to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Nobody should be bullied. Okay. Nobody should be, okay. And yet I get it. I get it. I absolutely, I don't say you're wrong, Robert. I don't disagree with you. And I'm not necessarily saying I feel sorry for Dylan Mulvaney, but I'll say this. Dylan's absolutely right. If Anheuser-Busch is going to hire Dylan Mulvaney to do a marketing thing for them and gets this kind of blowback, you ought to be trying to do something to back your people. Now, granted, it's a contract relationship. Strictly speaking, Dylan Mulvaney is not an employee of Anheuser-Busch, but you hired Dylan to do something for you. You ought to have their back. But let's continue with the video.
because it gives customers permission to be as transphobic and hateful as they want. And the hate doesn't end with me. It has serious and grave consequences for the rest of our community. And we're customers too. I know a lot of trans and queer people who love beer, and I have some lesbian friends who could drink some of those haters under the table.
And Dylan's not wrong on that. I know some lesbians that can absolutely drink people under the table. They could drink me under the table.
But to turn a blind eye and pretend everything is okay, it just isn't an option right now. And you might say, but Dylan, I don't want to get political. Babe, supporting trans people, it shouldn't be political.
Hold it right there. Hold it. Dylan, that's the problem with the whole thing. We didn't want it to turn political either. All we wanted to do was just, drink a beer on a hot summer day, or drink a beer at a baseball game, or drink a beer with our friends, or whatever. We didn't want this to turn political. Okay? This is not about the whole trans issue. In large part, this is about our anger with a manufacturer who took the dive into the political end of the swimming pool when they didn't need to. All they need to do is make a product that people want to buy and enjoy and leave the politics out of it. I mean, look, I think I can speak safely for millions of people, Dylan. Okay? I can speak safely for millions. We just want to enjoy what we enjoy. We don't want messaging jammed down our throat. If we want to get into a discussion of whether trans people are right or wrong, or whether we want, Pride Month to take place, or what things we want to see during Pride Month, we can have that discussion anywhere, anytime, any place. We don't need it shoved down our throats watching a beer commercial on TV. You're talking about you don't want it political? We don't want it political. That's our beef with Anheuser-Busch. That's the problem here. So no, we don't want the politics either, but you think the politics are directed toward you and the trans community. On that point, I think you're trying to be a little bit of a martyr. I'm not saying you're not getting hate from people. I get that. Okay? And no, I don't agree with bullying in any form whatsoever. But disagreement with you because, you're trans, that's not necessarily bullying. That's just disagreement. The larger point is, we don't want the politics either. We never wanted the politics to begin with. Okay? We just want to drink beer and have fun, like everybody. If you want to drink beer and if you enjoy beer, great. Happy for you. But why are you ramming trans and LGBT messaging down my throat through a beer commercial? I don't need that. I don't want it. Neither does anybody else, be it here in the United States or around the world. Now, the upshot of all my ranting is that Dylan Mulvaney is accusing Bud Light, or more particularly Anheuser-Busch, of hanging Dylan Mulvaney out to dry. Well, as you might expect, Anheuser-Busch did not take kindly to this accusation, which leads to our next article from the Daily Beast. Headline: Dylan Mulvaney lays into Anheuser-Busch for abandoning her to, quote, right-wing mob. Now, keep in mind, the Daily Beast is a little bit of a lefty organization. But I want to read you Anheuser-Busch's response to this. Okay. Let me find it here real fast. Here we go. An Anheuser-Busch spokesperson told the Daily Beast in a statement that the company remains, quote, committed to the programs and partnerships we have forged over decades with organizations across a number of communities, including those in the LGBTQ plus community. The statement did not, however, mention Mulvaney. The privacy and safety of our employees and our partners is always on our top priority. As we move forward, we will focus on what we do best, brewing great beer for everyone and earning our place in moments that matter to our customers. And yeah, I'm gonna pull this comment up because Leah, I was thinking about you as you're out there on the boat. You're probably having a brewski or two, hopefully. It's political because one side wants to celebrate how someone has sex. The other side just wants you to go about living your life and leave us alone. You got it. There is one of the rubs in this whole argument. I mean, myself, people watching this live stream right now, people, watching this later on at some point today, they just want to live their lives. They want to be with their husband. They want to be with their wife. They want to be with their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their kids, their family members. They want to get together this weekend and early next week for cookouts. They want to go watch fireworks. They just want to live their lives in peace. Yes, they know they're going to have to give opinions about politics if it's asked of them. But politics is not the sum of their lives. Or who or how they have sex with someone is not the sum of their lives. Unless, of course, you're a hooker, and I can understand that might be pertinent. But laying aside the fact that you're a hooker or a gigolo, how you have sex and who you have it with, is not necessarily the sole sum total of your life. People just want to be people. They want to live in peace. They don't want something rammed down their throats. They want to go to an LA Dodgers game, and they don't want to have, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence be awarded an LGBTQ plus thing during the ball game. They just want to watch a Dodgers game. But more and more in our society, this is what's happening. Now, with regard to Anheuser-Busch's response, God bless it. Oh, man. There is no good way for Anheuser-Busch to get out of this now. I mean, I thought even up to now they might have still had an escape ramp. It ain't happening. It's not happening at all. And it's of their own making, because now truly the leadership at Anheuser-Busch is caught right in the middle. There's no good way for them to do this. As a matter of fact, if I'm going to keep talking, try and find something real fast on Twitter. And because this, to me, truly is indicative of how bad things are going for them. It's not going to let me pull it up. Doggone it. Thought I had it, and I'm not going to be able to find it. But basically, the CEO of Anheuser-Busch goes on CBS this morning, and the reporter's talking about, asks the CEO, where are you guys at? We gives an answer, and the reporter for CBS this morning does something very rare, and he pushed back and said, well, your answer is just kind of indicative. It seems like you can't come down on either side of this issue, and that's the problem now for Anheuser-Busch. They are so stuck in the middle of this, there's no getting out of it. If they do go apologize to their existing base of customers that they've had for decades, the LGBTQ community is just going to eat them alive from one side. If they don't apologize, the existing customer base that's been there for decades is going to eat them alive from the other side. They're stuck. There's no good getting around this. And, I just don't think this gets any better for them. And frankly, even if they did apologize, it ain't going to do any good. Because number one, no one's going to believe them. Because every time you turn around, you find more evidence of Anheuser-Busch's involvement in LGBTQ plus issues. Being the sponsor of this event somewhere, or giving a contribution to that organization, whatever. There's no getting around this. They're screwed. Screwed of their own making. Okay? So I just saw these two news articles this week, and I thought, that's kind of funny. I think we'll bring this up and talk about it. Just really kind of amazing. So it's about 5 minutes after 12 on Saturday, July the 1st. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative. And I want to do one last thing on this live stream, especially given that we're going into the 4th of July, Tuesday of this week. And I want to read something written by Rush Limbaugh. Not the Rush Limbaugh that everybody knows and loves and misses desperately, but Rush Limbaugh Jr., his father. Now, for those of you who don't know a whole lot of Rush Limbaugh III's backstory, his dad was a very famous lawyer in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. He was also a member of the Missouri state legislature at one time in his life. And he was also an orator. He would give speeches, on various topics at request. And one of them was he wrote an address about the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. And I'm going to pull it up here in a second and read from parts of it, because I think that it is very healthy for us in 2023, now almost 250 years removed from the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. I think it is very pertinent for us to know what these men went through and what they sacrificed personally and professionally to give us what we are today. Because for all of our problems, and God knows there are many, and God knows most of them are self-inflicted, we are still the greatest nation on earth. I will say that going to the grave. We are still one of the most free nations on earth in certain respects. I'm not saying totally. Like I said, we got a lot of problems. We got a lot of things to work on. But ask me where I'd rather be in the world. I'll take the USA every day and twice on Sunday. I still love my country. In spite of all the things that make me crazy and make me want to tear my hair out, I'd rather be here than anywhere else in the world. We are still that shining city on a hill. We just got a few things we've got to work through right now. And we'll always work through them in one form or another. There's never going to be a day when, Americans can say, everything's totally cool and we have nothing to worry about. Yeah, and I do appreciate this perspective, Millicent. I really do. Yeah, I think you're right. So having set this up, I want to read a little bit from a speech written by Rush Limbaugh Jr., Rush's dad. So let me pull this up. And this has to do with the fate of the founders. Boom, 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 da, 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 da. Yep. You got it, sister. You got it. So let me pull this up. This comes from rushlimbaugh.com. And the first part of the speech talks about the day of the adoption of the Declaration. And here's the part I want to get to. It's a section of the speech called Much to Lose. What kind of men were the 56 signers who adopted the Declaration of Independence and who, by their signing, committed an act of treason against the crown? To each of you, the names Franklin, Adams, Hancock, and Jefferson are almost as familiar as household words. Most of us, however, know nothing of the other signers. Who were they, and what happened to them? I imagine that many of you are somewhat surprised at the names not there. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Patrick Henry. All of them were elsewhere. Ben Franklin was the only really old man. 18 of the signers were under the age of 40. 3 of them were in their 20s. Of the 56, almost half, 24 of them, were judges and lawyers. 11 were merchants. 9 were landowners and farmers. And the remaining 12 were doctors, ministers, and politicians. With the only exceptions, such as Samuel Adams of Massachusetts, these were men of substantial property. All but 2 had families. The vast majority of men of education and standing in their communities. They had economic security as few men had in the 18th century. Each had far more to lose from revolution than they had to gain by it. John Hancock, one of the richest men in America, already had a price of 500 pounds on his head. He signed in enormous letters so that His Majesty could now read his name without glasses and could now double the reward. Ben Franklin wryly noted, "Indeed, we must all hang together, otherwise we shall all most assuredly hang separately." Fat Benjamin Harrison of Virginia told tiny Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, quote, "With me, it will be over in a minute, but you will be dancing on air an hour after I'm gone." These men knew what they risked. The penalty for treason was death by hanging, and remember, a great British fleet was already at anchor in New York Harbor. They were sober men. There were no dreamy-eyed intellectuals or draft card burners here. There were far from hot-eyed fanatics yammering for an explosion. They simply asked for the status quo. It was change they resisted. It was equality with the mother country that they desired. It was taxation with representation that they sought. They were all conservatives, yet they rebelled. It was principle, not poverty, that had brought these men to Philadelphia. 2 of them became presidents of the United States. 7 of them became state governors. 1 died in office as vice president of the United States. Several would go on to be U.S. senators. 1, the richest man in America, in 1828 founded the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. 1, a delegate from Philadelphia, was the only real poet, musician, and philosopher of the signers. It was he, Francis Hopkinson, not Betty Ross, who designed the United States flag. Richard Henry Lee, a delegate from Virginia, had introduced the resolution to adopt the Declaration in June of 1776. He was prophetic in his concluding remarks. "Why then, sir, why do we longer delay? Why still deliberate? Let this happy day give birth to an American republic. Let her arise not to devastate and to conquer, but to reestablish the reign of peace and law. The eyes of Europe are fixed upon us. She demands of us a living example of freedom, that we may exhibit in contrast to the felicity of the citizen to an ever-increasing tyranny which desolates her polluted shores. She invites us to prepare an asylum where the unhappy may find solace and the persecuted riposte. And if we are not this day wanting in our duty, the names of the American legislatures of 1776 will be placed by posterity at the side of all those whose memory has been and ever will be dear to virtuous men and good citizens." Though the resolution was formally adopted July 4th, it was not until July 8th that 2 of the states authorized their delegates to sign. It was not until August 2nd that the signers met in Philadelphia to actually put their names on the Declaration. William Ellery, delegate from Rhode Island, was curious to see the signers' faces as they committed the supreme act of personal courage. He saw some men sign quickly, but in no face was he able to discern real fear. Stephen Hopkins, Ellery's colleague from Rhode Island, was a man past 60. As he signed with a shaking hand, he declared, "My hand trembles, my heart does not." Even before the list was published, the British marked down every member of Congress suspected of having put their name to treason. All of them became the objects of vicious manhunts. Some were taken. Some, like Jefferson, had narrow escapes. All who had property or families near British strongholds suffered. Francis Lewis, New York delegate, saw his home plundered and his estate in what is now Harlem completely destroyed by British soldiers. Mrs. Lewis was captured and treated with great brutality. Though she was later exchanged for 2 British prisoners through the efforts of the Congress, she died from the effects of her abuse. William Floyd, another New York delegate, was able to escape with his wife and children across Long Island Sound to Connecticut, where they lived as refugees without income for 7 years. When they came home, they found a devastated ruin. Phillips Livingstone had all of his great holdings in New York confiscated and his family driven out of their home. Livingston died in 1778, still working in Congress for the cause. Lewis Morris, the 4th New York delegate, saw all of his timber, crops, and livestock taken. For 7 years, he was barred from his home and his family. John Hart of Trenton, New Jersey, risked his life to return home to see his dying wife. Hessian soldiers rode after him, and he escaped into the woods. While his wife lay on her deathbed, the soldiers ruined his farm and wrecked his homestead. Hart, 65, slept in caves and woods as he was hunted across the countryside. When at long last, emaciated by hardship, he was able to sneak home, he found his wife had already been buried, and his 13 children had been taken away. He never saw them again. He died a broken man in 1779 without ever finding his family. Dr. John Witherspoon, signer, was president of the College of New Jersey, later called Princeton. The British occupied the town of Princeton and billeted troops in the college. They trampled and burned the finest college in the country. Judge Richard Stockton, another New Jersey delegate signer, was rushed back to his estate in an effort to evacuate his wife and children. The family found refuge with friends, but a Tory sympathizer betrayed them. Judge Stockton was pulled from his bed in the night and brutally beaten by arresting soldiers. Thrown in a common jail, he was deliberately starved. Congress finally arranged for Stockton's parole, but his health was ruined. The judge was released as an invalid when he could no longer harm the British cause. He returned home to find his estate looted and did not live to see the triumph of the Revolution. His family was forced to live off charity. Robert Morris, merchant prince of Philadelphia, delegate and signer, met Washington's appeals and pleas for money year after year. He made and raised arms and provisions which made it possible for Washington to cross the Delaware into Trenton. In the process, he lost 150 ships, bleeding his own fortune and credit almost dry. George Claimer, Pennsylvania signer, escaped with his family from the home, but their property was completely destroyed by the British in the Germantown and Brandywine campaigns. Dr. Benjamin Rush, also from Pennsylvania, was forced to flee to Maryland. As a heroic surgeon with the Army, Rush had several narrow escapes. John Martin, a Tory in his views previous to the debate, lived in a strongly loyalist area of Pennsylvania. When he came out for independence, most of his neighbors and even some of his relatives ostracized him. He was a sensitive and troubled man, and many believed this action killed him. When he died in 1777, his last words to his tormentors were, "Tell them that they will live to see an hour when they shall acknowledge it," the signing, "to have been the most glorious service I have ever rendered to my country." William Ellery, Rhode Island delegate, saw his property and home burned to the ground. Thomas Lynch, South Carolina delegate, had his health broken from privation and exposures while serving as a company commander in the military. His doctors ordered him to seek care in the West Indies, and on the voyage, he and his young bride were drowned at sea. Edward Rutledge, Arthur Middleton, and Thomas Haywood Jr., the three other South Carolina signers, were taken by the British in the siege of Charleston. They were carried away as prisoners of war to Augustine, Florida, where they were singled out for indignities. They were exchanged at the end of the war, the British in the meantime having completely devastated their large land holdings and their estates. Thomas Nelson, signer of Virginia, was at the front of command of the Virginia military forces when the British General Lord Cornwallis in Yorktown, fire from 70 heavy American guns began to destroy Yorktown piece by piece. Cornwallis and his staff moved their headquarters into Nelson's palatial home. While American cannonballs were making shambles of the town, the house of Governor Nelson remained untouched. Nelson turned in rage to the American governors and said, "Why do you spare my home?" They said, "Sir, out of respect to you." Thomas Nelson cried, "Give me the cannon," and fired on his own magnificent home himself, smashing it to bits. But Nelson's sacrifice was not quite over. He had raised $2 million for the revolutionary cause by pledging his own estates. When the loans came due, a newer peacetime Congress refused to honor them, and Nelson's property was forfeit. He was never reimbursed. He died impoverished a few years later at the age of 50. There's a little bit more to that article, but I'm just going to stop it right there. The next time that some blue-haired, pierced, whatever they are, tells you that a bunch of old white men ruined this country from the start, go find that article on Rush Limbaugh's website or just Google it. You can find it. It's real easy to find. Read them some of that, or let them read it for themselves. And let it sink in what those 56 men, a lot of them, gave up so that you and me can sit here today talking to each other and getting ready to celebrate our country's independence. Hopefully, it makes them change their mind. But anyway, it's about 12:20 on Saturday, July 1st. My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. This is Front Porch Brunch. We're getting ready to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody who's been here this morning. Robert, Millicent, Leah, Ruben, everybody, and everybody's going to be watching this, after it's done. I want to thank all of you guys. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I've got one of the smartest, funniest audiences in the whole of the internet, and this little program is growing. Every time I do this, I feel like it gets a little better, and you guys keep bringing the funny. You guys are great. You really are. And even if it's 2:20 a.m. in Australia, you crazy woman, God bless you. God bless you, dear. Either you don't like to sleep or, you are really hard up for entertainment watching this. That's all I'm saying. We're going to be next week being 4th of July week, going to be kind of a limited schedule. I'll put out a few videos, but I don't know that I'm going to be doing a chatting on the porch, because I could probably reach out to some people, but I don't want to disturb them this close to the 4th of July and, alter any of their plans. A lot of them might be traveling, etc. So I don't want to do that to folks. So we'll put out some videos next week on a limited basis as news comes up and things get interesting. We can talk about them. There's a couple or three ideas I've got, and I may clip some of this to actually, make it a video and put it out there. So, but you guys are awesome as always. You guys are just amazing. You make what I do a lot of fun. And, if you guys weren't here, I wouldn't be doing this, So anyway, for those Americans that are watching this, either live or somewhere down the line, I absolutely love you guys. Spend some time with your family this week. Tell them you love them. Let off some fireworks, daggone it. Light some sparklers if that's all you got. But, put your hand over your heart, say the Pledge of Allegiance. Whatever it is you want to do to show people that you love America, this is the week to do it. So I'm trying to think of how I want to close it, and I don't think I want to use my usual closing. I just want to do something kind of appropriate for the time. And I'll do a little bit of a mix. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing. Let freedom ring. We'll see you next time.